Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, but today is something that I have been thinking about for a while, and something that I think, based on the title, you can see that I have other interests than just film. And I'm actually kind of very curious about how all of you will take this, but I started a new blog, and in fact, I wanted to introduce you to this blog and talk about different areas of interest of mine. And I hope that all of you could potentially read it and also give me, comments and suggestions on the direction of the blog. But a lot of these things are going to be very exciting. So today I want to talk about that blog, and that blog's called Not Jonesing Around. I know it's an original, but it's notjonesingaround.blog if you want to find it. It's down in the description down below. But I hope you're able to find this, because this is a season of change, right? This is October right now. We're all watching horror films, or we're getting into fall mood, right? We're gearing up for Christmas as well. Some of you might not like to hear that, but I am excited for this time period in my life, and a lot of good things are happening right now, especially during this very trying time for all of us, because a lot of us are going through a lot right now. And so that being said, I wanted to write about this process because I've always been interested in writing. In fact, back in graduate school, I wrote quite a bit, and I really loved it. And it's been a while since I've written any work. And so this blog is going to explore my interests, but also some thought pieces that I have on a lot of things going on in the world. Maybe some things in my personal life that I would love to share with all of you. So I'm hoping that all of you could find this interesting. So what am I going to talk about on this blog? Well, first of all, let me talk about the thing that is probably the most obvious: film. So as many of you know, I started this channel, well, some of you might be new to my channel, but years ago, 3 years ago, almost 4, I started this channel with the mind that I would do movie reviews. In fact, I have 2 movies early on from that time period when I reviewed. So I have like Get Out and Princess Bride. This was my first video that I ever did, not on this particular edition because this came out a little bit after, but I talked about Princess Bride, one of my favorite films of all time. I also talked about Get Out, and I did a movie review of each of these. I don't think I did any spoilers back then. In fact, I didn't really want to do spoiler reviews because I really valued that first time viewing for somebody who was watching my video, but also the first time watching this recommendation of mine for this film. And so with both of those films in particular, I remember fondly talking about them and talking about them in detail of the different areas of interest at that time. In fact, these films mean different things to me now than they did then. In fact, it's interesting to think about how I was back then, especially when I was doing movie reviews. But I would eventually get onto this channel where I would kind of go ebb and flow with different ideas, and some things popped in and out of existence, and I kind of grew as a person. And some things, like when I did my 100 Years of Movie series, which was one of my favorite series that I did on this channel years and years ago, a couple years ago now actually, now I'd love to revisit it, I would find the films that I had never heard of in my research. So like from 1928, I have Carl Dreyer's The Passion of the Joan of Arc, and this is just, one of those films that just blew me away on my first viewing, and absolutely is my favorite film from 1928. In fact, I talked about a lot of films that were new in my life, and I really thought about some of my films that I wanted to watch during those months that I talked about the films in those particular decades that came out. And I learned so much just exploring these different areas of interest. And I continue to explore all of this through my channel, right? A lot of us who are currently watching this know that I'm a huge boutique Blu-ray fan, and I'm a fan of a lot of the things going on in the world right now when it comes to world cinema and whatnot, but I also want to write about it. I kind of want to do writing again on film. And this could be any different particular. I could do like a movie review again, or I could be just talking about themes of different films, or connect it to some personal stories of mine. And I would love to do that. In fact, that's why this blog exists. That's one aspect of this blog, is film, right? I'm not quitting YouTube because I'm going to continue doing this, because this is definitely my mainstay when it comes to producing content for all of you and for me as well. So I hope you can enjoy that aspect of the blog. But what about the next aspect of blog? Let's talk about books. All right, so with books, many of you know recently I've been talking about books in the last few videos. In fact, I have over there that Fight Favorites book from TCM that I recently got a library card for the first time. And I haven't had a library card probably since I was in elementary school when I used to go to the library and read back in the day. I used to read something like Magic Tree House or The Hardy Boys, Goosebumps. These are the books that I would read when I was younger. I'd read like The Hobbit, and eventually get to, you know, Lord of the Rings, right, with these books, which were some of are my favorite films of all time, and some of my favorite books of all time for sure as well. And I would eventually get into some of the stuff that in my young adulthood, I would start reading more philosophy, more history, more classic books. So something like the Karamazov Brothers or the Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Some of these things really rang true to me when I was reading them. And in fact, they still hold a place in my heart. I love Russian literature, English literature, American literature. In fact, American literature, speaking of them, I even have biographies and a lot of on friendships and on different types of people. I have a Frederick Douglass biography that I'm still have to read. I'm reading right now a Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee filmography book, and I have something like this, right? Solid Seasons, the friendship of Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, two of my favorite writers from the time periods who wrote a lot about transcendentalism and in tune with just kind of the nature around them and what it means to be in society. So I have a lot of interests in books, and I want to write about it. I want to write about some of the things that I'm reading, some of the things that I'm currently interested in, and some of the things that I want to share with all of you. And I want to know what you're reading as well. And so that's kind of what a second aspect of this blog is going to be about. It's going to be about books, and I'm really excited about that. But what about the third aspect? The third aspect is music. So the third aspect is music, and music has been a mainstay my entire life. I've always loved music ever since I listened to, you know, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC in the late 90s, and eventually got off of that train and went to classic rock, right? So like something like Led Zeppelin right here that I would listen to. Queen, David Bowie, Pink Floyd. These are some of the albums I grew up with, mainly because of my father and also my best friend, who was my neighbor, who was 3 years older than me. We used to play video games and downstairs in our basement, and then we would just listen to music, right? We would listen to stuff like LimeWire, and we would illegally download a lot of those things. But by the way, this is very, we're okay. Legally, we can say this now. I know everyone else did too. But I also had CDs. I had CDs, and I had like Pink Floyd's The Wall. That was one of the first CDs that I owned back in the late 90s. I remember getting that, and you know, these are things that have stuck with me for the longest time. In fact, in early college, when I was getting out of high school, I actually got a job at a record store. In fact, I got all these records right here from that record store. And records have always been a part of my life. Music's always been a part of my life. I went from classic rock to alternative to hard rock to metal to country to jazz, blues, rap, all of it. I love it all. Indie rock, everything under the sun. There's something good about each particular genre of music. In fact, I have a few to show you real quick of some of my interests in the past. So something like Opeth's Damnation or Black Water Park. Opeth's one of my favorite bands, and I still love them to this day, right? I can get into that gothic melodic death metal that they like to have. Or I could talk about post-metal, right? Or post-rock. In a band called ISIS, right here, a defunct band now. They went away just as the name got unpopular in the world, unfortunately. But yeah, Oceanic, one of the best albums of all time. I love post-metal, and I love kind of the atmospheric nature of it. And then, you know, something more contemporary, more recent, to something like Death Heaven's Sunbather, which is more than meets the eye. This is a very colorful album, but a very dark and very light album at the same time. It's a black metal band. And I really love Death Heaven, and I love original black metal too, you know. I like Dark Throne and whatnot. But I also grew into interesting takes with stuff like indie rock, right? So like stuff like The National, Your Trouble Will Find Me, or Trouble Will Find Me right here, back in 2013. I fell in love with that band and Behringer. And then also something like Joanna Newsom, who, by the way, for the longest time, I had no idea that she was married to Andy Samberg. So that when I figured out that, it threw me for a loop. But I just wanted to show you some records to show you that I'm also going to be talking about music. Music is a big part of my life, and I've been rediscovering David Bowie, been discovering the Cranberries, and a lot of other artists that are really just starting to capture my attention. I really love music now. And so I really cannot wait to share this with all of you, and maybe I might do an album review or kind of talk about different themes of music or break down lyrics. I don't know, stuff that might just come to me. So I hope that all of you can check out each of these aspects, but there's also another piece that I want to mention. That's called a thought piece. And so when I'm thinking of thought pieces, I'm thinking of some stuff that is on my mind. And on my mind when it comes to the daily life that I have, and some bigger kind of concepts that I struggle with. And I want to kind of write that out and write that through that process. When I was younger, in graduate school, I went through a process of writing that was very personal, but also academic. And I found it very cathartic. And so I kind of want to do an aspect of that in this blog as well. So I'll be talking about all sorts of things on this blog, not just film records and books, but also thought pieces. So I hope all of you are potentially interested in this and reading kind of about some different stories in my life. And I hope that you can share some too. And I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section down below, but also read my blog and write a comment down below in the blog as well. I want to know what your thoughts on all this is. And I want to say thank you so much for checking this video out. I know all of you in the community are super, super supportive. You're some of my best friends, and I could not have made it through this year without you, because it's just, it's been a train wreck, but there's been so much positive stuff from it. I've met so many of you. And I continue to meet many more of you, and I've even met my girlfriend Vanessa from it, and I cannot be happier. And so thank you very much again for checking out this video. I hope that you can check out the blog. It's down in that description. Give me some feedback on it. I would love it. And so thank you so much for watching this video. Like, comment down below, share it, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around. .blog.